This is the Rocktek G2 4K streaming box. We're gonna open it up, check out what's inside, and then we're gonna take it into the theater, hook it up to my system, and see if it can dethrone my NVIDIA SHIELD, which I think most people agree is the best streaming device pretty much in the home theater market. Let's unbox. All right, first things first, big shout out to Rocktek for sending this out to me for review. They did send this to me for free to keep, and I am getting compensated to make this review. However, that's not going to affect how I feel about the product. If it doesn't perform that great, I'm gonna let you know, but I think this is gonna be pretty good. So let's go ahead and open this up. All right, so again, this is the Rocktek G2. Now, I had never heard of this device when they reached out to me, but it's got some pretty good specs, which we're gonna check out. Okay, so on the box, we can see here it's got some specifications. It has an A55 quad-core CPU, has 4 gigabits of RAM. It supports 4K HDR 120 FPS, which I feel like is a little bit kind of odd for a streaming device. There's nothing that you can stream video, movies, TV shows at 4K 120. So the only thing that I can think of is if this allows you to game on it, because 4K 120 is basically for gaming. So then we have Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos support, good. HDR10+ support, Wi-Fi 6. So for those of you that don't have any wired, Ethernet locations in your home theater, Wi-Fi 6 should be pretty good. It supports Bluetooth 5.0, USB 3.0, and gigabit Ethernet. And then it supports some streaming apps such as Netflix, Disney+, Prime Video, YouTube, your standard, streaming devices. So, we'll throw that to the side. Let's get this opened up. All right, so in the box, we have our streaming device. Let's set that to the side. And then underneath here, we get, looks like a little quick start guide there. And then we have our power cable that's going to plug into the device so you can get power. Set that to the side. Comes with an HDMI cable, very good. Always love it when companies provide this. And then we have our remote. So let's take a look at the remote first. So you actually get a standard size, I guess a pretty standard size remote, which some companies aren't even doing that anymore. Now, I don't know if this has an app, but this is the remote. All right, so taking a look at the remote, it's pretty light. Obviously, this doesn't have any batteries in it, and I don't think that this came with any batteries, so that's a little bit odd, Come on, batteries aren't that much. But we have our numbers, and then we have a green, or red, green, looks like that's a yellow and a blue button. And then we have our Google, OK Google, so you can use voice commands with this. You have your number pad, and everything has a nice feel to it. The buttons has like a kind of a soft tactile press. We've got our back button, we've got a home button, looks like we've got a bookmark, we've got a cog wheel, so I'm guessing that's your settings, and then we have a little TV icon, I'm not sure what that is. We have our mute button, we have the plus and minus for volume up and down, and then up and down for, channel up and down. And then you have some dedicated streaming app buttons. You have YouTube, Netflix, Prime Video, and Disney+. And then we have a power button at top. And yeah, the remote looks pretty good. It's, like I said, it feels good in my hand. It's not too big, it's not too small, so that's good. Now let's take a look at the actual streaming device. Okay, so here is the streaming device, and right away what I noticed is this area here has a very, I doubt that this is real leather, but it has a very leather-like feel. I actually like how this feels and looks. It doesn't look like your typical streaming device, but looks really nice. You've got your Rocktek logo there, and sits pretty flat. The footprint is pretty small. So on the back, we have our DC 12 volt which is going to be, you know, your power is going to plug into. Then we have our LAN, Ethernet, so very good. I'm glad that this has Ethernet and it's not just, you know, Wi-Fi, because I never use Wi-Fi on anything. If it has Ethernet, I'm going to use it. Only time I use Wi-Fi is on like streaming devices, or, you know, like my phone or a tablet that doesn't allow you to plug into Ethernet. And then we have the HDMI, then we have the AV, optical, and then we have a USB-C. And then on the side, we actually have some more ports. So we have a micro SD card, very interesting. Then you have your regular USB, and then you have a USB 3.0. So good to see that they have plenty of ports on this thing. Now it does have USB-C, like I mentioned, which is good. So you should be able to plug, you know, a USB-C hard drive, you know, maybe a couple terabytes, and you should get faster speeds out of this. Now, one thing I'm curious, what I mentioned before, is that this supports 4K 120. However, it doesn't say anything about it being HDMI 2.1, which from my understanding is the only way that you can get 4K 120. Now, technically, I guess you can get 4K 120 on HDMI 2.0, but those speeds are probably going to be limited to like 18 gigabits per second, and the bandwidth is going to be very limited. But again, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that. But this is the device, so I'm very curious to see how this compares to something like, you know, your NVIDIA Shield, which I think everybody would agree is probably the best streaming device on the planet, because it supports, you know, Dolby Atmos and DTSX for not only streaming, but for your local content, which a lot of devices still don't do. Very annoying. Even the Apple products, as good as they are, they don't support, you know, Dolby Atmos and DTSX for your local content. So I'm gonna test this out, and I'm gonna really test this out with Plex to see if it can handle, you know, local content. Now, obviously, it's gonna handle your streaming devices, like I said, like Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, but I don't really have anything to test 4K 120 with. My projector is still HDMI 2.0, and it only goes up to 18 gigabits per second. And my receiver doesn't even support HDMI 2.1. So unfortunately, I won't be able to test that aspect of it. But I will test this with a movie that has high frame rate, which is Gemini Man. I believe that one goes up to 60 frames per second. And even then, I won't be able to test the full bandwidth of that because my projector and receiver only support HDMI 2.0. So let's go ahead and get this in the theater, get it hooked up, and, you know, run the setup so you guys can see, you know, how it is, what the setup process is like, see how snappy this thing is, and then I'll just give you, you know, my thoughts. All right, so when we first boot up the device, we were prompted with a language select. So obviously I'm in the United States, so I'm gonna select that. All right, so now it wants me to quickly set up my TV with your Android phone, and it says TV, but it's actually the device. So I don't have an Android phone. I'm gonna hit skip, and then I'm going to set up my Wi-Fi network. Okay, so now it's connecting to my Wi-Fi network. Now, when I get this in the theater, I'm just setting this up right now. I'm not in the theater, but when I get it in the theater, it will be hooked up to Ethernet. So I would encourage you to hook this up to Ethernet for the best and strongest internet connectivity. All right, so I did read about this in the comments. So there is some Chinese, I think that's some Chinese lettering. Looks like it's downloading some updates or something. So it says to added the double click on home button to revoke the recent task, fix issue. So yeah, this is updating, and it's just telling you what the latest updates are. So I'm gonna let it go through this update, and then we'll see what happens next. All right, so after the device finishes updating, you will be prompted with your sign in. So this does run off of Google. I'm not sure which version it runs off of Android TV, so I'm not sure which version it has on here. But now I'm going to sign in. All right, and then it's going to tell you that you can use your Google Assistant to get better voice control of your TV. I don't really use this feature, so I'm just going to hit continue. And then it's going to ask if you want to search or allow search across all your TV apps. To do this, Google can share your requests with your TV apps, and you can turn this setting off any time. I'm gonna hit no thanks. Get personal results, no thanks. Get the most out of your Google Assistant? No. Again, you select which one you want for your preference. And then you can give your device a name. I'm going to name this Rocktek. Hit OK. And then it's going to ask me if I want to install additional apps. So I'm actually select a few of these. So don't use Voodoo, YouTube TV. I'll keep that. Paramount, Jellyfin, I'll unselect that. Kodi, and then Disney Plus. So from Rocktek. And then I will go back up and hit continue. And it says your R2 G2 is powered by Android TV. RT G2 sounds like something from Star Wars. Okay. And it's going to tell you can get your apps from Google Play Store. So just the same like an Android TV operating system. Okay. And then it is a Google device, so you can cast to this. And then it's going to ask you if you want low power sleep mode. So leaving on only essential service, shut down other services to keep equipment running at the lowest. But I'm going to turn off. All right, and then I can control the volume and power with your remote. Now, the one thing that sucks about this is I already checked and this device is not available in the Harmony database. I am probably just going to set this up with the remote manually, just teach it some codes, because this device is going to be behind me in my rack. I don't know what the ranges of this remote is, but I would rather just use my universal remote to control all my devices all at once. So I'm going to hit not now. And then it looks exactly like Android TV. It looks just like my NVIDIA Shield. So you've got your Netflix app, you've got your Prime Video app, YouTube, music, and the operating system is pretty snappy. There is a little bit of lag with the remote, and I'm only about 6 feet from the device. Again, this is running off of Wi-Fi right now, so once I get this in the home theater and get it on Ethernet, you know, it'll probably be a little bit faster. But it's pretty snappy, so I'm gonna add some apps to the home screen. I want Disney Plus. I want Plex. And let's see if there's any other apps. That's pretty good. I'll add MB as well. And then I can rearrange these. All right, so like I said, it's fairly snappy. There is a little bit of lag depending on, you know, how quick you're moving the cursor on the remote. But I mean, it's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. So I'm gonna unplug this, get it hooked up in the theater, and then I'm going to test some of the apps. So I'm probably going to test Amazon Prime, Disney Plus. Now I do have the cheap version of Disney Plus, so it does not support Dolby Atmos, but it does support Dolby Vision. However, I will be using this mainly with Plex to see, you know, how it supports everything 4K, HDR, HDR10 Plus, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, and DTSX. So let's get this set up in the theater. All right, so I'm in the theater. I have the Rocktek connected to my equipment. I've got the Rocktek connected to my HD Fury 4K Diva, and I've got the remote here. And just a side note, I wasn't able to get the Rocktek into the Harmony. I could teach it the remote codes, but it's just going to take too long. However, the remote works from here, so it works at my seat. It's not that big of an issue. But it is a little bit slow, and sometimes it does lag a little bit. It can be quick at times, but you know, it's just not as quick as some other interfaces. But I wanted to show you a couple things now that I actually have it hooked up to my receiver and my HD Fury 4K Diva. So I wanted to go over to the settings, and if we go into the settings and specifically device preferences and display and sound. So there's some kind of weird settings that I've really never seen in something else like the, well, I'm comparing this basically directly to the NVIDIA SHIELD TV, the 2017 version, and probably the 2019 version, because this is running the same OS Android. But there's some settings in here that I've never seen on the NVIDIA Shield. So if I go into HDR settings, this isn't even a setting on the NVIDIA Shield. So when I go into HDR settings, I can toggle on and off the HDR, the Dolby Vision, or the HDR Auto. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but I just wanted to show you some of the settings in here. So then if I go to screen resolution, I can do auto switch to best resolution. I can turn that on and off, and then I can go into display modes and color space. Now, what's weird about this setting is this doesn't necessarily work. So when I have the auto switch set to best resolution, which is what you want because you want your resolutions to change. So if you start watching something that's 23.976 or 24 hertz, and then you switch to something, a TV show or something that's in 30 hertz or 60 hertz, you want that to switch automatically. You don't want to have to go back into the settings and manually switch that. However, this doesn't work. So I noticed that, okay, so when you change this to auto switch to best resolution, it automatically sets the display mode at 4K 60, which is okay. You want everything to be able to play all the way up to 4K 60. However, I've noticed that when I'm watching movies, 4K, 23.976, doesn't matter what resolution it is, 1080p, but the frame rate does not switch over. It just stays at 60 hertz in the menu. And I've checked it, I've double checked it with my HD Free 4K Diva, and it shows that it's 60 hertz. And I've even gone into Plex. So I'm using Plex on this. The Plex app does work. But even when I go into Plex and make sure that the settings are enabled for automatic refresh rate switching and frame rate and all that stuff, it still doesn't switch. So the auto switch doesn't work. Not sure why. Maybe it needs an update. Now, when we go into display mode, you have a very limited amount of displays. So on the NVIDIA Shield, you have way more options that you can do with this. And then, it tells you 4K, 2K, 60 hertz, you have 50 hertz, 30 hertz, 24 hertz. But if you go into your NVIDIA Shield settings where it says display mode, there's a lot more settings. So I'm not sure why this one doesn't have the same amount of settings. Again, maybe it can be updated. I don't know if that's, a limitation of the chip on here or something. And then color space, you have these color spaces. And then there's a note that says the HDMI output may get problems if the TV or HDMI cable can't support this color setting as well. Now I've had to go in here and kind of switch this around a little bit. Like I said, I'll talk about this in a little bit with like Dolby Vision and HDR, but I have had to change this manually because I've had some issues. So the other thing I wanted to show you was the audio. So if you go to audio, obviously you can choose, SPDIF, which I have that turned off. If I go to select formats, you've got a couple options, and I'm using pass-through. That's what you want to use if you're wanting to get bitstream, your Dolby Atmos and DTSX. And I'll talk about this in a little bit as well because I have had some issues with this. So those are some of the settings that I wanted to show you now that it was actually hooked up to my receiver, my projector, my HD 4K Diva. Now I want to tell you about how it actually functions and the pros and cons of this media streamer. All right, so how does this little guy perform? Well, first I'm going to talk about the remote really quick. There's not really a whole lot to say about the remote. It's a good size, it feels good in my hand. However, there's a couple things, and one is kind of just really nitpicking, and then the other one I feel like, is valid. But I wish there was an actual play button, play pause button, instead of just clicking the center button. Again, nitpicking, it works fine. I like to have an actual play pause button. I've never really liked, having to skip forward or skip back with arrows. It works, again, so I'm not going to harp on that very much. The other thing that I think is valid is I wish that this was backlit. If you have a blacked out theater like I do, when you're watching a movie, it is very, very hard to see. It's pretty much impossible to see the buttons and the numbers, what you're trying to press. So eventually you'll get used to where the buttons are, But again, I wish this was backlit. So, all right, so let's talk about the actual device. So there's some really good things about this, nothing really groundbreaking. And then there's some other stuff that I feel like may sway you from getting this depending on your setup, if your setup is like mine. So let's tackle the video first. So video, this thing does 4K 24, 4K 30, absolutely fine. 4K HDR, HDR10, plays it just fine. I played it in my theater and I also played it in my room, which I'll talk about that a little bit more. But as far as the video, most of the video codecs work well. There are some issues that I had specifically with Dolby Vision. Again, I'll talk about that in a little bit on the negatives. But as far as video, this thing is pretty solid. So I use this inside of the theater and I had it hooked up to my HD Fury 4K Diva. And then I also hooked this up to my TV in my bedroom, which is just a cheap Vizio TV that supports Dolby Vision. But, 4K 30, 4K 24, I didn't have any issues playing the video, didn't stutter or anything like that. So very good on the video side. On the audio side, I did have some issues. So I'll talk about that again on the negatives, but for the most part, the audio plays fine on this. Again, this is running pretty much the same Android software that your NVIDIA Shield is running. So everything looks exactly the same. The GUI looks exactly the same. The menus for the most part are exactly the same. So no real issues there. Okay, so let's talk about the bad on the video and audio side. So really the only issue that I had with this was trying to get Dolby Vision, at least in my theater. Now, I was able to get Dolby Vision in my bedroom, but let's talk about in the theater first. So in the theater, I had this hooked up to my HD Fury. And if you don't know what the HD Fury is, there's plenty of videos on my channel. I'll, maybe put a link in the description or add a card somewhere up here, right there. But I had this hooked up to my HD Fury. And when I turned on the Dolby Vision on this device in the settings, it just went completely nuts. I either got a black screen or I got a flickering screen back and forth that just continued to do that. It never stopped. Sometimes it would be a flickering screen, and the audio would, or I'm sorry, the video would come up, like I could see something for about maybe 10 to 15 seconds, and then it would start flickering or I would get a black screen, and it just continued to do that. So the only way that I was able to get that to stop was to turn the Dolby Vision off, which was very hard considering that the video is still flickering back and forth. But once I turned the Dolby Vision setting off, everything else worked fine. HDR10 worked fine, SDR worked fine. So I know it's not an issue with the HD Fury because I have 4 other devices that work absolutely fine. I have my Oppo UDP203, I have an Apple TV 4K first gen, I have my Zedu media player, and then I have my Xbox Series X. Low latency Dolby Vision works absolutely fine on that. I have 0 issues. So this is the issue. Now, I don't know if it's a hardware issue or if it's just, maybe Rocktek needs to buy an HD Fury device and do some research on it and maybe just send an update to this. For whatever reason, it just doesn't like being hooked up to my HD Fury. So Rocktek, when you watch this, I would consider, getting an HD Fury device and testing it with this because there are a lot of people who are using an HD Fury on their projector to get Dolby Vision. The good news is that when I hooked this up to my TV in my bedroom because I wanted to see if the Dolby Vision was just an issue on this device or if it was because I had it hooked up to my HD Fury. And the good news is I plugged this up to my TV and Dolby Vision worked absolutely fine on streaming services. I tried Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. Absolutely no issues there, no flickering, nothing. So again, for whatever reason, when this is hooked up to an HD Fury, it does not like the Dolby Vision. I don't know if it's bandwidth or something, but it makes me wonder what HDMI standard or version they're using on this. Which brings me to my next point, because this on the box says that it can do 4K 120, which I find very hard to believe. One, because this is a streaming device. There is no content in movies or TV that supports 4K 120. The only thing that you would use 4K 120 is for gaming. And I don't know if you can game on this. I don't, so I didn't even try to look or try to find out. But I find that very weird that it says it on the box, but I couldn't find 4K 120 anywhere in any of the settings. Now that could be a reason because my projector and my receiver does not support 4K 120. So maybe it's one of those things where that won't even show up unless it detects that your display can play 4K 120. But again, I didn't see any of that. So for audio, I had an issue with Dolby Atmos and DTSX. Again, it could be because it was plugged up to my HD Fury. I don't really know. But the issue that I was having was when I was watching Blu-rays on Plex, so, 4K Blu-rays ripped on Plex, whenever I watched something that had Dolby Atmos or DTSX, the audio would play for about 5 minutes and then I would get an intermittent audio. So the audio would cut out for about 5 to 6 seconds and then it would come back and then it would play fine and then it would cut out again for 5 to 6 seconds and then it would come back, and it was constant like that. So the fact that it can play the audio makes me wonder again, what type of HDMI version are they using? I don't know if it's like a bandwidth issue or something, or again, it could just be that it's hooked up to the HD Fury. I didn't hook it up to anything else because I don't have another surround sound system. However, I did hook this up to my TV again, and playing 2-channel audio through the TV, there was absolutely no issues. Even when I was playing something that had Dolby Atmos on, the file in Plex, it just outputted as 2-channel Dolby audio, no issues. DTS, however, I did have an issue with, but I think that's more on my TV not supporting DTS. I don't think it's because of this. But I will say that also, I did have a problem with standard DTS HD Master audio, the same issue in the theater. So I don't know what the issue is with that, but this probably just is not compatible with an HD Fury, and that's not the HD Fury because, like I said, my other devices work with that. Okay, so streaming. So I tried this with Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, and I believe Paramount Plus. And for streaming, this works absolutely fine. I tried this, or I watched some content on streaming on Paramount Plus with Dolby Atmos, and that played fine. So again, that makes me think it's a bandwidth issue because we all know that Dolby Atmos over streaming is compressed. It's lossy Dolby Digital Plus with metadata. But there were no issues with that. Streaming Dolby Vision was excellent. HDR10 was excellent. I didn't have any issues streaming whatsoever in my theater or on my TV in the bedroom. Now, Ethernet and Wi-Fi. No issues with Ethernet, so nothing to say there. I had this plugged up using Ethernet in my theater and in my bedroom, but I also wanted to try the Wi-Fi, and so I used the Wi-Fi in my bedroom and 0 issues. I don't even have Wi-Fi 6 in my house, but this thing worked fine. I streamed 4K HDR 10 from Plex over Wi-Fi, 0 stuttering, 0 issues with audio or video. And then I also stream some content from Dolby or Disney Plus and Amazon Prime. So absolutely no issues there either. Now I did want to say, because I did say in the video, in the beginning of the video, that I was going to try this with 4K 60, and the only thing that I have that matches that is Gemini Man. So I tried this in my bedroom, both on Wi-Fi and hardwired with Gemini Man, and I got stuttering pretty much through, for however long I watched it. Didn't matter how long I watched, but it would play for about, I guess, maybe 30 seconds, and then it would kind of like lag, and then it would refresh, and then it would start playing, and then it kept doing that. So I'm not going to hold that against this too much because I've had issues with that video on my NVIDIA Shield and other devices. And I think it's just because, I'm not using HDMI 2.1. There's a bandwidth issue with 4K 60. So I'm not going to hold that against this too much. But the reason why I bring it up is because if this can support 4K 120 and my TV can support 4K 60, I'm not sure what the bit rate is on that, but I shouldn't really get any stuttering. So I just wanted to mention that in case you guys, are thinking about watching any type of content that maybe have a high frame rate. And then the last asterisk would be the 4K 120 claim. So again, on the box it says 4K 120 that it supports it, but I don't see anything that says that this device supports HDMI 2.1. So it's kind of weird there. So I'm not sure why they have 4K 120 on the box if it doesn't say HDMI 2.1. But other than that, those are the pros and cons. So who is this for? Now I'm going to answer that in basically two ways. I'm going to answer that if you're a home theater enthusiast or you're a non-home theater enthusiast. So if you're a home theater enthusiast and you're not using an HD Fury, I would absolutely recommend this to you as a much more affordable option as opposed to something like an NVIDIA Shield TV. The NVIDIA Shield TV looks like it's going to be a little bit more powerful. The GUI on this, even though it's running the same Android, it's not as quick to me. My NVIDIA Shield 2017 has started to slow down, but it's still pretty snappy. And this, at times, is pretty snappy, but then there's like, it kind of lags a little bit. But I'm not going to hold that against it too much. There's other devices that are far worse. But if you're not using an HD Fury in your chain, then yes, this device is going to play pretty much solid. It's going to be solid. Now, I did not hook this up in my theater just directly to the receiver. And the reason why I didn't do that is because I don't want to. Like, I want to use this how I want to use this in my setup, and I want to be able to use my HD Fury to get low latency Dolby Vision. And the fact that I had issues with that when I have zero issues with everything else, to me, that just didn't sit right with me. So if you're a non-home theater enthusiast, then I would say yes, I would recommend this to you because one, you probably don't even know what an HD Fury device is, and you probably don't even care about like Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Maybe you're just using this in your bedroom or you're using this in a kid's room or a living room, and you don't have a home theater setup. This is going to be a good device to use. And maybe you don't want to spend the money on an NVIDIA Shield or something like that. All right, future me here. So Rocktek was able to give me some feedback on some of the issues that I was having that I wanted to address before I end this video, so you have a better understanding of why certain things weren't working or why I was having issues. So the first thing is the 4K 120. And as I said in the video, I wasn't able to test that because none of my equipment is HDMI 2.1 compatible. However, Rocktek does assure me that it is compatible with HDMI 2.1, so the HDMI 2.1 standard, and 4K 120. Again, if you're just watching movies, I'm not sure when you would even use that functionality, but I wasn't able to test it because my equipment just wouldn't allow me to. I'm limited with my equipment, but they said that the device is HDMI 2.1 compliant. All right, second thing is the Dolby Vision when using my HD Fury 4K Diva. So I'm gonna leave a link in the description and in the comments to where you can go check that out. There is, I guess, a workaround that you can download for that. I'm still not quite sure how that works, but I will leave a link. But just as a reminder, or just to remind you that the Dolby Vision does work on my TV without anything in between. I'm not using HD Fury, it just plugs directly into my TV that supports Dolby Vision, and that works fine. But if you're using an HD Fury and you want to pick up this device, I'll leave a link in the description where you can see or where you can read and download the, I guess there's like an update that you can use or something that you can download to make your Rocktek G2 work with your HD Fury product. And the last thing is the audio dropouts that I was having while I was watching movies with Dolby Atmos and DTSX. So Rocktek did confirm that there is a bug with the device, but they will be coming out with a firmware update in late May or early June. So once that comes out, I'll update it and I'll test it, and maybe I'll make a post. I probably won't do like another video just for that, but I'll probably make a post and let you guys know, how that works. Now, I did want to say that I have been using the Rocktek G2 in my living room. I moved it out of my theater and put it in the living room, and it's hooked up directly to my 2015, I believe, Sony Bravia TV, 4K TV, and I'm actually enjoying it. So I replaced my Roku, and I've never really liked Rokus, but I bought one a while back because my TV is from 2015, and even though it has Android, it is absolutely slow, and it just got annoying. So I just bought, you know, another streaming device that I could use that was quicker. I've never really liked it, but I replaced it with the Rocktek G2, and it's been absolutely stellar. The remote controls my TV, and right now that's all that I'm using. I don't have a receiver or any speakers with it, and it works pretty much flawlessly. I haven't had any issues with it. It actually works a little bit quicker, you know, the GUI, using it in the living room. So I'm actually quite happy with that because it gives me, it's almost like having an NVIDIA Shield, but without the price tag, and it's 4K 120. So if I ever update my TV to support HDMI 2.1, then, you know, I'll be future-proofed. So I just wanted to let you guys know those quick updates, and I'll let you get back to past me. So very good device with a few quirks. Again, Rocktek, please get an HD Fury device. It may not seem like it, but a lot of people are using those with their projectors, and that's a very integral part of my home theater. So I would encourage you to get one of those, test it out, and then if you can, send out a firmware update or hardware update, something to get this working. But that's going to be it for the Rocktek G2 4K media streamer. Really cool device. I'm really glad that they sent this out to me again. Thank you, Rocktek, for sending this to me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you're not already subscribed, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more reviews that are coming to the channel. I have a lot of stuff coming through the pipeline that I'm very excited about, that I think you're going to be very excited about. So once again, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.